Fire Emblem, 3 Houses, a unique entry of the series where unit customization knows no bounds. Notably, units can wield any weapon type they want whenever, but what if they couldn't? What if there were only one kind of weapon? My goal is to beat the Verdant Wind route on maddening and classic difficulty, but I may only wield bows in combat. The most glaring restriction is the lack of any magic, including support magic like heal or warp, but outside of weapon selection, everything else is fair game. So, knock an arrow, shoot the subscribe button, and join me on this 2-ranged journey. After having the pleasantest of dreams, our protagonist was met with this region's Pokemon professor, who inquires about their biological information. I fancy the female form for preferable features like flight, and dearly dub her the default designation. Now that Byleth exists, Sothis sends her off to start her adventure, where she is subsequently introduced to the 3 starter Pokemon, but also her father. This can only mean that this is not a Pokemon game. The prologue is interesting, as Claude's Iron Bow is the only weapon I'm allowed to use. Unlike the other weapon types, bows attack from 2 spaces away and cannot attack or counterattack from adjacent spaces. Additionally, this game introduces a bow hit rate penalty, with increasing severity as the range exceeds 2. This will apply to some combat arts and the bow range plus skills, which are exclusive to the archer class line. Edelgard and Dimitri act as trade mules and meat shields, while Claude and Byleth hot potato the single bow around, shooting down all the bandits without much fuss. However, Costas' miracle procs at the end of player phase, and he tries to go for the now empty-handed Edelgard. Byleth attempts to flex her 7 defense, but Sothis calls a timeout and brings Byleth into the... wherever they are. She admonishes Byleth for using something so stupid and ineffective as a 1-ranged weapon. To avoid this axe-backed fate, Byleth vows to only use bows, a sentiment that will be shared by every unit I gain. Through some heavy-handed storytelling, Byleth is brought to Garrigmach Monastery and is bestowed a teaching position by her grandma-mom-daughter, Rhea. Since it is thematic to the challenge, I elect to teach the Golden Deer House.
Time for McDonald's all-day breakfast.
Chapter 1's mission is a mock battle between the 3 houses. I still don't have access to the marketplace, but Ignatz and Lysithea each have a bow in their inventories, bringing my total weapon count up to 3. The first hurdle is Ferdinand, who will require all hands on deck. First, I attack with Claude, who is supported by Hilda's personal skill, Advocate, which grants adjacent male units plus 3 damage. Then, I move Hilda left so Ignatz receives the Advocate boost and attacks from 3 spaces away with Curve Shot, made accurate thanks to the plus 20 hit from his personal skill, Watchful Eye. Leonie engages while adjacent to a male ally, activating her personal skill, Rivalry, and tacking on an additional 2 damage. Finally, I trade Ignatz's Iron Bow to Byleth and besmirch the Von Iron name. Hubert and Ash both approach and get damaged on the counterattack, making them easier to dispatch. Now that the situation has stabilized, I lick my wounds with Vulneraries and approach the rest of the Black Eagles, defeating them with similar tactics. After the Eagles get shot down, the Blue Lions make their move. Ignatz valiantly sacrifices himself to weaken Mercedes, which just leaves Dimitri and Dedu. I take refuge in the forest, but realize that I have vastly underestimated them. I am filled with regret from this tactical failure, as my units have become sitting ducks, being unable to counter and not being able to deal nearly enough damage to salve. Claude got 1% crit. So, as I was saying, the Blue Lions are no match for us, and we win the battle. In Chapter 2, Sedith assigns us our mission for the month, which is to kill the group of bandits that attacked us during the prologue. Due to Byleth's inherent laziness and lack of work ethic, she procrastinates to do this until literally the last day, which will be customary for most chapters. Leading up to the deadline, I get to lecture and instruct my students to raise their skill ranks. Obviously, I train everyone in bows, and also authority, which will allow my units to lead stronger battalions and get nifty skills like rally. The armory finally opens, lifting my restrictive weapon selection. Notably, we can get the mini bow, a D-rank bow that lets us attack and counterattack at 1 to 2 range. It can't perform follow-up attacks at 1 range, and it lacks effective damage against flying units, but it will be very useful. Finally, we get to Chapter 2's mission, which places the squad in an outrageously large map chock full of enemies, including Poison Strike archers that have 2 to 3 range, and thieves that can move past my units. As the turns go by, a new group of 2 to 3 enemies begin to approach, so I turtle and handle them in the starting area. Considering vulneraries are my only method of healing, I have to be extra defensive and body block effectively to deal with pass. Once the aggressive enemies are dealt with, I charge west, grabbing the money in the chest and making my way towards Costas. After shooting 5 arrows all aimed at his crotch, Costas dies via testicular acupuncture. Truly a terrible way to go. In Chapter 3, Rhea tasks us with suppressing a hissy fit led by Lenato. After picking up the Ashen Wolves and Karen Strassman, I take pot shots at a defenseless man with the heal factor, allowing my units to pick up some more weapon EXP. Upon reaching the specified bow rank, every unit can learn the skills Bow Prowess, Close Counter, Bow Critical plus 10, and Bow Fair. All units learn Curve Shot, but a select few units who have some affinity with bows can also learn unique combat arts that have great power and/or utility. Once I get to the mission, I use Catherine and her green light abilities to bait enemies and extend my vision, as my group moves towards the Dark Mage to dispel the fog. A cutscene plays where Catherine and Lenato stand a generous distance away from each other, glaring angrily, which is accurate, as Catherine will not move close enough to fight him. I attempt to funnel as much EXP into Claude as possible, aided by his own and Byleth's personal skills, in order for him to reach the level threshold for intermediate classes. In Chapter 4, the monastery is on high alert as an assassination plot against Archbishop Rhea is revealed, allegedly taking place during the Rite of Rebirth. The mission is not on the last day of the month, which enables the use of the calendar glitch. Having at least one free day between the current free day and the mission, I highlight skip to date on the mission day and hold right before selecting it. With some luck, the date and events will change, and Byleth will go past the mission date and wrap around to the start of the month. Repeating a month nets me as many free days, lectures, and church paychecks as I desire. Since I can only equip bows in battle, faculty training and lectures are the only methods available for my units to get experience for other weapon types, which are essential for reaching class certification requirements. Our class deduces the assassination plot is just a distraction, so the Holy Mausoleum will be unprotected, leading us to rush in to stop the boss from defiling the tomb within 25 turns. Additionally, we are introduced to the Death Knight, an egregiously powerful enemy who we are intended to avoid by moving around the perimeter. However, I notice Claude, who is now an archer and has gotten some really good level ups, can actually survive an interaction with some support. I set up Claude with Rally Luck from Anna, Rally Speed and Rally Dexterity from Ignatz, and Rally Strength from Raphael, before parking him next to Hilda for the Advocate boost. Claude is now fast enough to avoid getting doubled, and the Death Knight fails to land a critical hit. I swarm him with uncounterable gambits to whittle down the remainder of his health until I can secure the kill, giving me a Dark Seal and positional advantage. After the boss is defeated, Byleth reclaims the Sword of the Creator, so it can now collect dust in the convoy. Chapter 5 sees the Golden Deer House tasked with routing the thieves led by Miklon, who has stolen House Gautier's Hero's Relic. I get more archers in the form of Byleth, Ignatz, and Leone, and restore what I can of the saint statues before setting off on the mission. We are joined by Gilbert, who is as useful as he is good at being a father. We advance slowly up the tower, being wary of ambush reinforcements with pass, and staving off damage with vulneraries. Once all other enemies are taken out, we assail Miklon with arrows until he transforms into a black beast. With a mix of seal skills, gambits, and break shots to weaken the monster, the Black Beast is killed without much fuss. We return to the monastery, and Rhea requests that we return the Lance of Ruin, but I refuse. Since I recruited Sylvain on the side, he waltzes in informing us that House Gautier has formally entrusted the relic to him, letting us obtain it instantly. Like the Sword of the Creator, it's not a bow, and thus the only thing I gain from this chapter is Rhea's ire. In Chapter 6, Sedith has clumsily misplaced his younger sister, so the entire monastery is turned upside down to find her. After collecting a sufficient amount of evidence, we deduce that Yuritsa's the culprit, so we rush in to save Flame. The whole month? Instead, I take my time and realize that Shamir can be recruited starting from this chapter. She is one of the 2 accessible pre-promotes of the game, as she is already a sniper at level 11. I shower Shamir with gifts in order to reach C rank support, lowering the level requirement so she will accept recruitment. As Flame and other missing personnel waste away in Yuritsa's basement, I take my squad into auxiliary battles to get surrounded by weak enemies. Just being in a combat grants a unit class mastery EXP. This process will be my standard for mastering classes in order to procure useful skills for my units. Now that the month is over, Claude laments about how we never found Flame, but Deez Mockingnaught swoops in and tells us that there's suspicious activity from Yuritsa's room. We find Manuela, who's been bleeding on the floor for the past month, and discover a secret tunnel behind a bookshelf. Before we can investigate, Hanneman shows up to whisk our lord away, which is a dumb plot contrivance, but we don't need him anyway. We go through the passage and find Flame, the Death Knight, in an annoyingly constructed map that requires rooting all enemies within 25 turns. Alternatively, the map can be cleared by taking out the Death Knight. I had Shamir master the Archer class, which grants the self-explanatory hit plus 20 skill, and the Sniper class, which grants the class-exclusive Hunter's Volley, one of the best combat arts in the game that conveniently has enough range to hit the Death Knight, despite him being in a separate, enclosed room. Coupled with an accuracy ring and rally support, Shamir can effectively offset the accuracy penalty, but is just shy of guaranteeing the kill. Deathblow and Bowfair were infeasible to obtain on her by the end of the month, so to remedy the situation, I create and forge a Killer Bow Plus, banking on high critical odds to complete the chapter in one turn. The Flame Emperor shows up, conveniently when our lord is absent, and retreats with the Death Knight. Claude finally returns from Hanneman Hell, and we recruit Flame to the bench. Chapter 7's main attraction is the Battle of the Eagle and Lion, a huge mock battle between the three houses. I recruit Bernadetta, who will end up being an exceptional bow user, Dorothea, whose songstress personal skill gives me a source of passive healing, Annette, who will be a dedicated rally bot, and Ash, who is. Ensuring my units gain skills like Death Blow, Hit plus 20, Poison Strike, and Alert Stance Plus, courtesy of an ample amount of time warping, I deploy for battle and set my sights on the central hill. First, Dorothea uses a Stride Gambit, granting affected units plus 5 movement. I then charge in with Leonie to defeat not Bernadetta on the Ballista, using her exclusive combat art, Point Blank Volley, which strikes twice at one range. Byleth exerts her air superiority by shooting down the Western Pegasus Knights, which are one-shots due to Bow's effective damage against flyers. I maintain the center, using the combat art exclusive to Bernadetta and Claude, Encloser. It reduces an afflicted enemy's movement to 0, which I use to keep Ferdinand at bay. Coked up with morale-boosted stats, Edelgard and Caspar march towards my squad, much sooner than I had hoped. Just like in the last mock battle, fallen units won't die in this fight, so I volunteer Ash and Dorothea to act as speed bumps to slow their advance. Claude revokes Edelgard's movement privileges with Encloser, allowing Leonie to revoke Caspar's existence privileges with Point Blank Volley. After feeding Leonie a tasty tomahawk, Edelgard is sent back to the kitchen, and the rest of the map is a cakewalk. Victory secured, we meet with all three lords, who talk about how they hope to never actually cross blades with one another for realsies. Before I continue with the story, I opt to do some paralogs to get some nifty things to speed up the subsequent chapters. In Manuela and Hanneman's paralog, I snag the experience gem and extort EXP from the boss to get Claude and Byleth to level 20, the threshold for advanced classes. At the conclusion of a paralog, I'm rewarded with a battalion, notably in this case, the Index Sword Fighters. Next up is Ingrid and Dorothea's paralog. Rooting the enemy would be tedious, so I opt for the alternative victory by rushing Ingrid to the escape tiles. Lewin is useless to me, but the real prize is Ingrid's battalion, as good flying battalions are a rare commodity. Finally, Ignatz and Raphael's paralog focuses on saving some merchants from bandit and monster attacks. But I had different priorities. After witnessing quintuple homicide, I clear out all other enemies and isolate the boss. Using the experience gem and Professor's guidance, I managed to safely get my important units to level 20. Beyond having superior class skills and mastery rewards, advanced classes also boast high stat minimums, permanently bolstering a unit's base stats. For instance, certifying in the Fortress Knight class will raise a unit's base defense stat to 17 if it is anything less, which is actually really good. We finally advance to Chapter 8's mission, where you must quell the trouble in Remire Village. This map is easy, even without my relatively overpowered units, so I make the effort to save the villagers for the free stuff, because I always take good care of my green units. Once Tomas reveals himself as Solon, he becomes self-conscious about his appearance and tries to hide away, so I hold his head up high by affixing an arrow through his enlarged frontal lobe. With the chapter complete, Claude makes an excuse to be off-screen, which is the Flame Emperor's cue to appear. He requests to join forces. However, we already made our single, allotted, impactful decision at the beginning of the game, so our choice here is outright ignored. In Chapter 9, Byleth and Gerald are tasked to investigate the alleged trespassing and disappearance of students in an abandoned chapel. Although this could be knocked down in like half an hour, tops, Dad's gotta go to the store to pick up some milk. In the meantime, I prepare for Christmas and elect Dorothea to participate in the White Heron Cup, earning her the dancer class. Before the Christmas party begins, the Golden Deer House all gets together to gush about the merriment. Claude proposes that everyone meets up in 5 years for the Millennium Festival, which might be a promise that not everyone will be able to keep. Right as Gerald comes back with the groceries, all hell breaks loose at the chapel. The map consists of a handful of demonic beasts that all get shot down with ease, and we rescue a totally inconspicuous student. Byleth prematurely ends her turn before recognizing the girl was actually a red unit, resulting in Gerald getting shanked. Byleth uses Divine Pulse in an attempt to save her father, but in her haste, uses the Sword of the Creator, prompting my referee to intervene. This flagrant disregard of the rules cannot go unpunished, and the ruling on the field is that Byleth is to be deducted one family member. Rules exist for a reason, Byleth. I made it very clear. Per her father's instructions, Byleth searches the room and finds his diary, detailing his history at Garreg Mach and revealing the mysteries behind Byleth's birth. Claude finds us and asks if he could peruse the diary, but I deny it. He believes the diary may unearth secrets the church has since buried, and remarks that he is willing to sneak in and take it with or without our permission. I get reprompted, but of course I must decline, as this is an extremely tender moment for Byleth. As she has only recently developed emotions, this is her first experience with grief, loss, and anger. The diary is not just a memoir, but the words her father could never say to her. The truth behind her existence, the hardships he endured,
Allow me to borrow
safety of a child, the love of either father or child. I am convinced to let Claude borrow the diary.
I'm forever in your debt, Teach.
Chapter 10 begins with a melancholy tone, driven further by Byleth's gloomy expression. The sad music continues to play while exploring the monastery, except in the marketplace. In spirit of this, I play Anna's Prologue, which is teeming with powerful enemies guarding treasure. But all I want is the flying battalion with Stride, so I push Anna into a corner outside of enemy range and wait until they all escape with the goods. And I win, by some definition of the term. Claude gets intelligence that the group who murdered Gerald are in the sealed forest, so after some arm twisting, we receive Rhea's leave to take them down. The goal is to defeat Krania, who, proportional to her characterization in this game, does not warrant any further discussion. I've equipped Leone with skills to maximize her attack and hit rate, with the newest addition being Uncanny Blow, the female-exclusive skill earned for mastering the DLC Valkyrie class, which I have also bestowed to Hilda, Bernadetta, and Shamir. After a rally in Stride, I use Leone as a heat-seeking missile to obliterate the boss at the end of turn 2. In the subsequent cutscene, Solon pops up and rips out Krania's heart. A relatively easy task, considering her chest now has 2 arrow-sized holes. Solon unleashes the forbidden spell of Zaharas, casting Byleth away into a void of pure darkness. Meanwhile, everyone does all just have a quaint little chat that devolves into,
"Your friend has been swallowed by the darkness. They are as good as dead."
And the game transitions to a more engaging conversation. Shocking, since one of the 2 participants is mute. So if this concludes, the only way to escape is to cast the Polymerization spell card to fusion summon Byleth as Lime Green Eye Professor, whose special effect also grants +2 damage. However, we must sacrifice Sothis as fusion material and discard her in the graveyard pile. Once Byleth returns, all of my units are placed near the center, and our objective changes to defeat Solon. Since the turn never actually ended when I took out Krania, all my units retain their single turn buffs. meaning Leone is still set up. After a dance from Dorothea, I use Leone as a heat-seeking missile to obliterate the boss at the end of turn 2. After passing out and having a weird scene with Rhea, Chapter 11 begins, and Byleth is tasked to sit on his special chair. Before the ritual begins, I place an order for the legendary bow Parthia, and prove to the delivery man that I am capable of wielding such a bow. I also pick up another flying battalion in the form of the Keyhole Wyvern Co. Detours out of the way, our class arrives in the Holy Tomb, but sitting on the chair does not trigger the goddess's return, but instead, ambush reinforcements. The Flame Emperor and some mook appear and demand the crest stones from the tomb. This map has a lot of enemies, but victory is achieved once the Flame Emperor is felled, which I aim to do in a single turn. Bernadetta is finally able to show off her niche as the only unit with access to both Deadeye and Uncanny Blow. Factoring in other methods to bolster hit, she can easily offset the hit rate penalty whilst attacking at extreme range. I begin by having Byleth use Stride on Bernadetta, before having Claude and Shamir push her down with Smite. Bernadetta is able to get within Deadeye range of the Flame Emperor, and manages to survive a counterattack thanks to having 17 defense from the Fortress Knight certification. Next, I set up Leone with Rally, Stride, and a Dance in order for her to reach and defeat the Flame Emperor, all done in a single turn. It is unceremoniously revealed that Edelgard was the Flame Emperor. Rhea orders us to kill her, but Edelgard says she has accomplished her objective, despite that being demonstrably untrue since not a single enemy had a chance to take an action, but skedaddles away with Hubert regardless. Oh yeah, Claude's just been having like his own Ace Attorney investigation for the past few chapters, just don't worry, he's fine. In Chapter 12, Edelgard has become the new Emperor of the Adrestian Empire, and has declared war on the Central Church. She procrastinates until the end of the month to invade Garreg Mach, proving that she has learned much during her time at the Officers' Academy. Just as before, the plan is to rush Edelgard, but since she is much further away, I must deal with the close and aggressive enemies, which is accomplished with the hearty helping of Hunter's Volley, and with a non-flyer Byleth, using the Index Swordfighter's Gambit to allow affected units to counterattack at any range. Once the Death Knight and Siege Weaponry are out of commission, I am ready to take out Edelgard. After Stride and Rallies have been distributed, Bernadetta runs through enemy lines with Pass and shoots Edelgard from far away, so Leone can finish the job up close and personal. However, Edelgard then reveals that she has wasted everyone's time, as she calls in the reserve troops to completely overwhelm us. Rhea transforms into the Immaculate One, a dragon of legend, to fend off the Empire. Claude, for some asinine reason, is fighting with a sword, and will receive the penalty in due time, but my referee is currently busy with Byleth, who has used the Sword of the Creator once again. Since Byleth has run out of living family members, the ref makes a game time decision and throws her into the penalty chasm for the next 5 years. Chapter 13 is the beginning of Part 2, Verdant Wind. Byleth has woken up from her little 5-year nappy and gets surprised by Exposition Man before running off to Garreg Mach in hopes to reunite with her students. She finds Claude, dramatically burning his corneas because Byleth forgot to teach him not to stare into the sun. With unsatisfied masochistic urges, Claude immediately drags the both of them into arguably the hardest map in the game. There is no preparation screen, so my units have what they had equipped from the previous battle, except Claude, who's gained the Wyvern Master class, the Hero's Relic Failnaught, the Immortal Corpse Battalion, and Pass added to his personal skill. After bestowing him with counterattack, Claude attracts the attention of all nearby enemies. I've built Claude to maximize his survivability, relying on dodge tanking and the prayer ring, but he barely makes it out alive as the enemies are extremely fast and strong. At the beginning of turn 3, I get supported by the remaining members of the Golden Deer House at different corners of the map. While 2 of the groups are safe by virtue of either being able to fend for themselves or being outside of enemy detection, the remaining corner is exposed and in peril, as Ignatz has a poor defensive profile, and Lorenz is level 3. I can't risk leaving Claude to protect them, so I Gambit and Canto him to safety, leaving the boys to the whims of fate. Ignatz lands a critical hit on the Grappler, uses Lorenz as a destructible wall for protection, lands another critical hit on the Assassin, and makes a coin flip dodge to survive. To be frank, I had fully anticipated that both of them would die here, but I'll gladly accept the godly powers of Deez Machinats. With the initial onslaught of enemies dealt with, I can easily beat the map, first defeating the decoy, and then the real Pilardo. What remains of the Golden Deer House gather in some nostalgia-inducing, joyous banter, with Claude remarking how everyone is alive and well. How everyone is alive and well. After meeting up with the Knights of Saros, Byleth gets more updates on current events. Rhea has gone missing. The Adreskian Empire continues to wage war on Fodlan. Dimitri has ostensibly been executed, and Claude now leads the Leicester Alliance, since Duke Regan, his grandfather, has died due to Claude's egregious rule-breaking 5 years ago. The gang decides to fight against the Empire whilst looking for Rhea, who Byleth now apparently cares deeply about. Chapter 14 sees us defending Garreg Mach, but this time, the Empire lacks sufficient funds to produce a CGI cutscene that forces us to lose. Hilda has gone to level 30 and can access master classes like the Bow Knight, which has bow range +2, mounted movement, and canto. However, since Bow Knights are unable to use Hunter's Volley, I may opt to have some of my units remain as snipers. There will be indefinite Falcon Knight and Paladin reinforcements that spawn every other turn unless we succeed in pulling off Claude's scheme, by getting the Allied Swordmaster to the Onager. I have no way to heal him, so I just have to clear a path and do my best to bodyguard. I fail, since the game displays that it intends to kill the Swordmaster, but it lied, and the Falcon Knight instead attacks Claude for a 0% chance to do damage. Once the green unit gets in place, Claude exploits Randolph's inferiority complex and forces his units to overextend, falling into our trap and letting us easily mop the floor and keep the monastery safe from Imperial control. At the start of Chapter 15, we realize we don't have food, so Claude places a delivery order. Our driver, Judith, says she will meet us halfway, which happens to be the volcanic wasteland of ALL. After skipping the month, we finally arrive at ALL, but Judith has not yet arrived. To pass the time, we beat up the local populace, including Gwendol, a suicidal warrior, and Ash, our old pal from the academy. I shoot him a friendly messenger arrow, and, much like the blood gushing out of his fresh wound, the values that led him to fight against us rapidly exit his body, and Ash rejoins our side. As my units trailblaze a path forwards, Gwendol gets jealous that I've been killing his squadron, and rushes towards us to receive the same treatment. Judith finally arrives and gives us food, soldiers, and herself. In Chapter 16, we can advance on Empire territory by reclaiming the Great Bridge of Myrddin, formerly controlled by House Gloucester. I wonder what happened to its heir. Our objective is to defeat all 4 enemy commanders, so I only deploy flying units in order to avoid as much fighting as possible. After a stride, Claude flies over to handle the Northwestern Paladins. I have swapped his skills to be an enemy phase fighter, with new additions of Battalion Wrath to bolster critical odds, and an incredibly potent quick riposte, the War Master Mastery skill. When my unit has over half their HP on enemy phase, the speed stat is ignored and guarantees my unit can make a follow-up attack. It also prevents enemies from making follow-ups, adding some defensive utility as well. While Byleth stays back to handle Acheron, the remainder of my forces advance to assail Ladislava. The Aurora Shield makes her immune to flying effect bonus damage, and Aegis gives her a 30% chance to have bow damage, making her a potential nuisance. Emphasis on potential. In Chapter 17, we advance past the bridge towards Gronder Field. You know, the same place we had the big battle of the Eagle and Lion between the 3 houses 5 years ago. Oh, there are reports of an Imperial force being led by Edelgard herself, and a force from the Kingdom bearing the flag of Dimitri's house approaching from behind. Wonder what that's all about. Completely unexpected, the 3 lords reunite once more, but this is no mock battle. The map ends when both Edelgard and Dimitri are defeated. Since this is the battle of the Eagle and Lion, I plan to stay true to the name and keep deer involvement to a minimum. I leave the Central Hill and Dimitri's group alone and charge everyone left. As a Bow Knight, Bernadetta can finally flex her range, hitting Hubert from 7 spaces away, and her accuracy by shooting down not Petra in spite of her absurdly high avoidance. Both Dimitri and Edelgard get bored, so Dimitri's group begins to advance, and Edelgard sets the Central Hill on fire. Most of the enemies get distracted by each other or get stuck on the burning hill, but the Swordmasters and Dimitri decide to take the upper route and have the craving for venison. With Dimitri successfully taking the bait, I defeat the surrounding enemies and prepare to find a safe area to hide in. I get my grounded units outside of Edelgard in the monster's combined attack range, and hide my flyers in the mountains. This forces Dimitri to enter Edelgard's attack range, starting the real battle of the Eagle and Lion. With both sides hitting like a truck, Dimitri is victorious, fulfilling his wishes and life's purpose by defeating Edelgard, and we commemorate the occasion by shooting him in the crotch. Once the dust settles, we are dejected that Edelgard escaped, and learn that Dimitri tripped and died via impalement. But that's okay, because he had completed his character arc. With the Shoehorn class reunion over, we return to our regularly scheduled program in Chapter 18, advancing deeper into Empire territory. The gang comes up with an elaborate ruse to seize Fort Mercius, but that all goes to waste since I can ignore everything and just defeat the Death Knight. While Nadir makes a guest star appearance in the north, I set stride on Leone and Ignatz and begin my own scheme. I use Impregnable Wall on Ignatz, which reduces damage dealt and received to 1, and push him down the stairs so he can get in range of the Death Knight. Even though Ignatz only deals 1 damage during combat, his Poison Strike still activates after combat, lowering the Death Knight's HP enough so Leone can finish the job with point-blank volley, earning us the victory in a crucial strategic location. Unfortunately, a bunch of nukes fly down and obliterate the fortress. Chapter 19 takes place in Enbar, the Imperial capital. Our army is split up on a map teeming with enemies. However, only 2 enemies are necessary to kill to complete the chapter, the Death Knight and Hubert. The first turn is for positioning, putting my southern flyers on the river and clearing a direct path to the center with my northern squad. On the start of turn 2, I prepare to kill the Death Knight. After a stride, I use the same Impregnable Wall Poison Strike tactic with Ignatz, performing it twice thanks to a dance, and dealing a total of 30 HP. Then, Shamir comes with a Silver Bow Plus and uses Hunter's Volley, getting a guaranteed kill thanks to Violet's Sacred Power skill, granting +3 damage to adjacent allies. Next up is Hubert, who requires much less thought, as a strided Leone handles him with ease. We move directly onto Chapter 20, but unlike previous defeat boss chapters, I'm unable to simply rush in and reliably dispatch Edelgard, so I'm forced to interact and handle the other enemies first. Their stats eclipse those of my own underleveled units, so in the most literal of senses, my best form of defense is offense. I begin by stabilizing the foyer, via sheer force or stripping away enemy movement courtesy of gambits and enclosure, while also being wary not to remain in siege weaponry range. No enemies engage, allowing me to remove Not Petra's group and get the breathing room to handle Not Dorothea's squad when they approach from the south. While Dedue appears and makes 0 gains in another room, Bernadetta gets in a ballista battle, allowing me to get rid of enemy siege weapons without ever engaging in the side room's enemies. Once Hilda and Ignatz handle the Dark Bishops, I do the same for the Western Fire Orb, which puts me in a comfortable position. Reveling in my safety, I help Dedue out from afar, allowing him to advance and explode. Dedue's dazzling detonation draws in the enemies guarding the throne, yielding me a clear path to Edelgard. I finally unlock the door and meticulously place my units. I have a really cool setup to ensure a guaranteed kill, which starts with the blood guy crit, making all my efforts developing this plan utterly futile. You know what? I'll take it. However, the story is not over, as in Chapter 21, Judith brings us a note from Hubert, who apparently uses the same talking stationery as Princess Peach. He posthumously asks us to eliminate those who slither in the dark, the secret evil organization pulling the strings behind Fodlan's chaos. Hubert was able to deduce the location of their underground hideout, via advanced magic able to trace the nukes back to its source, and an ear to the ground because they blast heavy dubstep 24/7. We arrive in Shambhala, and the goal is to kill Thales, but he's protected in a building imbued with advanced, hidden, era-warding technology. A roof. The map doesn't truly begin until we leave the perimeter, so I use my unit's superior range to take as many enemies as I can uncontested. Once I enter the inner circle, the Viscum activates and Titanus reinforcements will spawn, but both can be stopped by opening up the side rooms and shooting down Pittacus and Bias. Both groups finally meet up to unlock the central chamber, which fortunately opens up like a convertible, letting me shoot Thales from outside the building and his range. Thales unfortunately falls on the self-destruct switch and hopes to take us out with him. Rhea, who we recently saved, transforms, and despite her only stopping 3 out of the 7 nukes, we survive, and Thales ironically dies to the roof that had once protected him. In the final chapter of Verdant Wind, Claude interrogates Rhea about Fodlan's true nature and the secrets she's been hiding. Ostensibly, this process is so draining that it kills Rhea before she can go into a berserk fury, thus preventing the final events of the Silver Snow route. Unfortunately, Rhea says Nemesis 3 times, causing him to awaken and kill thousands in his wake as he approaches the monastery. After all of the Golden Deer House gathers for a speech, we deploy for the final battle. I realize I have not used a single stat boosting item throughout the entire run, and I've accumulated quite the haul. I give Leone +2 movement and +7 strength to have more effective point-blank volleys, and use all the remaining boosters on Claude. With an evasion ring and alert stance plus, his avoidance is off the charts, and with counterattack applied, he can handle just about anything. At the start of the map, Nemesis will have +30 to all of his stats unless I take out the 10 elites first. While the rest of the group defends themselves, Claude parks himself in a forest to dodge and eviscerate Bladed and Goneril, along with the other mooks who dare approach the enemy phase. Claude carefully advances to the center, and is greeted by Daphnel and Gloucester. After freeing up the ballistas, he gets approached by a Karen and uses self-defense to handle the situation. Claude needs to reapply counterattack, so he heads north to shoot down Gautier and moves back to pit stop with Hilda. As Bernadetta uses her range to remove the Gremlin snipers, Claude crushes Dominic and pulls the plug on the meme. After winning a fail-not battle versus Regan and shooting Fraldarius out of the air, Claude has successfully taken care of all 10 elites, and prepare to kill Nemesis. I used the Ballista with Ignatz for a meaty 21 HP worth of poison strike damage. Claude does a decent amount with Fallen Star, and Leone, buffed by Rivalry, Charm, and Sacred Power, ends the game like I've done with many a chapter before, finishing Verdant Wind with only bows. This concludes my bow-only run of Fire Emblem 3 Houses. This never was much of a challenge, but more of a fun idea that facilitated me playing the game again and use exploits and strategies I never knew or considered in my first playthroughs. And most importantly, this satiated any potential desire to touch this game again, so all in all, this truly was a successful endeavor. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to boost my morale, and let me know that you'd like me to continue making content. Wait a second, did Constance gain tome experience as an action in Chapter 11? Well, guess that means it's possible to beat the game with only bows. Sorry everyone, have a great day, thanks for watching.